Welcome back to the channel. Thank y'all for hanging with me on this Monday. So, this is something my buddies and I talk about quite a bit. And this is something that I've noticed this year more than any other year bass fishing is fish short striking your bait, hitting your bait nowhere near the hooks and dropping it before you can even turn the handle on your reel, let alone set the hook. And this has happened a ton on a bunch of different baits. In April, when I was throwing a swim bait shallow a lot, fish would just come and nail it right at the boat and grab the tail. It almost was like a gar bite where they just and then let go. And you're sitting there waiting to feel the weight of the fish or feel the fish swim off, and they've dropped it. Same thing goes with fishing a jig around docks. Whenever I'm fishing a jig around docks, I'm typically fishing it real slow, leaving it in there, letting them have plenty of time to get it. And then I'm burning it back to the boat to make my next pitch. And a lot of times those fish will just dart out of the dock, grab it, and before I can do anything, they drop it. So I like to think the only common denominator there that wasn't there 5 years ago is forward facing sonar. So I think fish are being targeted a lot more, that they're getting their rest. They're not getting their rest. Times when they should be able to just sit out there in the open water, in the abyss, suspended in the creek channels and the main river channel, and not be fished for at lengths of time. Now they're being hit. Now they're being hit in the head. They're being fished for. So when I've been going to any lake this year, it's been trying to stay away from the forward facing sonar fish. So staying away from those main lake type places and go up the river, go into the back of the creeks, go into the places where the fish live shallow. Now, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I know a lot of guys have been avoiding that like 6 to 10 foot range, and there's a lot of fish that live in that range. That's that mid range, that especially a lake like Gunnersville and a lot of the Tennessee River lakes, they just set up really good for that 6 to 10 foot range, and not just in specific periods of the year, but in a lot of different times of the year. So when it comes to how can we get more fish in the boat, how can we mitigate the risk of fishing for these highly pressured fish that have just been educated time after time when they should be staying away from fishermen, get away from those high pressured situations. So we have the Ultimate Angler Championship coming to Gunnersville in a couple of weeks, and I'm hearing a lot of different ways of how this tournament's going to be won, and it's using baits that other guys don't throw and blah, blah, blah. I think it's going to be as far away from where all that scoping goes down, which the scoping goes down typically on the lower end of most lakes. The deeper water that is around structure and cover, that's where those guys are going to catch most of the scope fish. Once you get up the river, they're either out in the river channel where they're not really suspended over anything, or they're shallow and you don't necessarily need scope to catch them. So one other way is if you are dragging something on the bottom. This is a sneaky rig that I learned from that old YouTube series Circuit Breaker that FLW used to do, following a couple guys on tour. And Cody Meyer was fishing with Jason Johnson, and Jason was saying I was having a lot of fish just hit the tail of my worm, and when I'd go to set the hook, it would either rip the worm off, rip the tail off, or I wouldn't ever feel the weight of the fish. He said this is an old sneaky trick. So I'm going to show you guys real quick here. So here is just your normal shaky head that you would use for any finesse worm. So you're going to rig up your shaky head just normal. And before you rig up that shaky head, what I do is, so here's my line that is going to my rod. Here's my shaky head. And then your tag end, leave an extra long tag end there, and then tie on a little number 8 finesse split shot drop shot hook on the bottom. So number 8. If you go any bigger than that, this really isn't going to work. So really small number 8 hook on the tag end of your shaky head. I've had quite a lot of fish rather. Lots of fish this year in the summer months. Hit my worm, hit my shaky head, the Magnum version more so in the summer months. Hit that Magnum shaky head and not get that bait. So you can downsize, But this is one of my favorite ways when they're just grabbing the tail, because that's typically what they're always going to grab first. So just take that size 8 and just bury it right there in the tail. It's not going to mess up the action too much of the worm. It almost becomes like your live bait harness rig, but that's not going to mess the action up. That shouldn't hurt you in any way, and you should get more fish in the boat. So that's one of those things. If you can't avoid the pressure, you got to start tweaking your baits. I think this is the perfect time to use this rig. Don't know what it's called. Shaky head with a long tag line with a really small hook on it, and then bury that up in the tail. But that's what I think it's going to take. Getting away from the scoping part of the lakes has been something I did all year. Sometimes it panned out, sometimes it didn't. But you have to realize that this is a new technology that is just kind of sweeping the world of bass fishing. And the fish are becoming educated. They're becoming tougher to catch when you get around them. And I think even the guys that have scope are saying how much it has changed just in the last couple of years by how many people are doing it. A lot of the young guys who get a ton of time on the water, they're not going and punching or frogging or doing all these old school techniques. They're strictly scoping and video gaming them and watching them eat. So it's become tough. It's changed. Something like this could make all the difference if you're having trouble landing them on a shaky head. So try that, guys. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.